Good evening, everyone. Hi, Charlene. Hi, Quest Train, and hi, Sultanik. And hi, Travis and Seth. Glad to have you with us today. How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. So, thank you so much for joining us today because I know that both of you are pretty busy these days. And we'd like to introduce ourselves to our viewers, first of all.
Okay. Well, I'm Travis. I'm half of the company Interaction Games, and we've been working for the last few years to bring a new science fantasy TTRPG to market. Um, it's called Altered World, and we've been working on it in one form or a fashion. It's been in development for at least 27 years, and we're hoping to finally get it across the finish line.
Okay. That's definitely a labor of love. I mean, 27 years is not a short time to be working on any project. So, yeah, we're definitely talking about this later.
Yeah.
Okay, and Seth.
Yeah, hi. I'm the other half of Interaction Games. Travis and I have been pals for a long time and business partners for a couple of years now. We've been enjoying tabletop role-playing games for a couple of decades. We've had the luck and the joy to be involved with this project for a little while, and we're hoping that we can get to share it with folks and that they can learn to love it as much as we do.
Pretty sure. I mean, I've had a look at the rules and the artwork and stuff. It's looking pretty good already.
Oh, we appreciate that. We're pretty happy to see that it, just even having the quick start out there really was a big milestone for us. So
Yeah, no kidding. I can imagine. I will drop a link to the quick start in the chat. So that's currently available as a free downloadable product in Drive to RPG. Is that correct?
that is correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
And if we're currently working through an update to some of the rules, and so if you download from DTRPG, when we go to re-upload it, you'll get a notification that the new version is out, and so you can download that. And the game as is completely playable. It's just we found some from convention play. We've found a couple little tweaks that make the game a little better, I think.
Nice. Okay, and before we start, I'm just going to drop a link to the community showcase in the chat. So if anyone has any crafts they want to show off later, please drop them in there and we'll have a look at the end of the stream. Okay, so how about we start by talking about this 27-year epic? Because that really sounds like a massive undertaking.
Yeah. Do you want to start, Seth?
Oh gosh. So this game is the brainchild of a couple of gentlemen, Mike Hill first and foremost, and his partners at the time, JP McCauley and John Moore. They got together. They started working on this thing back in our college days. So it's been a little while. And Mike had this vision of a game that blended science fiction, fantasy, high tech, high fantasy, all that kind of stuff, with a really interesting storyline. And at that time, Travis and I were kind of playtesters for the game. And um, back then, the original three gentlemen developing the game thought that they had it ready for prime time after several iterations of playtesting and writing and rewrites and all that. But unfortunately, life happened. The internet wasn't a thing. Cloud backup wasn't a thing. So the data got lost. The game got lost. All the files got corrupted or whatever. And so it seemed to have been lost, but we were able to recover it kind of serendipitously. Travis?
Yeah. So Seth and I were, we've been friends since we were in junior high, and we were catching back up after a kind of a little bit of a prolonged absence, and just reminiscing about how much fun the game was. And I remember Seth saying, "It's really too bad that it's all gone." And I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I've been carrying around a proofreading print copy for 25
No
years."
way!
through like a whole my entire. I did 20 years in the Navy. I carried it around my entire time in the Navy, and then and Seth was like, well, "Does Mike know?" And I was like, "I haven't talked to Mike in 20 years. I don't know how to get a hold of him." And Seth was like, "Would you like his phone number?" And so at that point, we reached out and had a conversation with him and got kind of preliminary um, buy-in from them, and then we formed a company so that we can keep everything on the up and up. And we've formally licensed the IP from them, um, and so we're the exclusive, essentially licensee of the Altered World IP, and we have spent that time since then. This was probably almost 4 years ago at this point, um, and we've spent a lot of time trying to edit the game and bring it 25 years into the future, because it was very much a response to the games that were popular at the time, and those games or the editions of those games aren't necessarily being played anymore on a large scale. And so there's a little bit of adjustment that needed to happen. Not a whole lot. I think some of the ideas that Mike had originally are still pretty revolutionary. Um, but we've put in a lot of work on it, and it's been, like you said, a labor of love, but it's a lot of work. Holy moly. So like a 300-page book or something.
Yeah, but just the thing about the data being lost and then you having that proofreading copies, like I'm pretty sure that must have been like rediscovering lost treasure.
Oh, 100%. Like I
Sure,
remember.
sure, yeah. And hey, I would feel remiss if I didn't really shout out Mike and JP and John. Just much love to those guys. They've been so supportive as they've allowed us to sort of carry the torch on this thing, and hopefully, like we keep saying, bring it across the finish line. Their support has meant the world to us, and they've been really enthusiastic about any of the changes or updates we've made to what was originally their material. Right, it's their baby, and they really have done a lot to support us, and that's felt amazing going through this project.
Well, and,
So,
and it's I think it's so special too because it could have very easily gone the other way, right? They could have very easily been very possessive over their mechanics and very possessive
oh, for sure, yeah.
over their game world, and they've by and large given us kind of carte blanche to really do what we think is right for the game, and it really feels special to have that response from them.
So I've read through the background in the quick start, and
Mhm.
the world setting seems to be literally everything, literally everything. Would you like
Yeah,
to go over that? Just give us a kind of potted version of that.
so I've been working on, when you're running a business you always got to have an elevator pitch, and
Mm-hmm.
and I for me at least I've settled down. The elevator pitch is you take Shadowrun, you take GURPS, and you take riffs, and you throw them all into a blender, and the game world takes place 700 years in the future in the year 1546, and that gives you the high points of the narrative in a way that also shows there's a lot going on here, and it's done that way on purpose, not to be everything to all people, but so that everybody can find their game within this system.
Yeah, and also Call of Cthulhu players will be happy to know that there are a lot of tentacles in the game.
Yeah, that's a Seth ad.
Really? All
um,
right.
yeah,
Nice.
that one was I remember when we were working through that adventure, and that particular thing that you're referring to, um, it kind of caught me off guard, and I had a moment of like, "What in the hell are you talking about, Seth?" And then I think it grew on me, as Seth's ideas often grow on me, something like a fungus. Um, but no, that's a fun little bit. So
Yeah, that's one thing we do like about Altered World. Just like Travis said, it's got a robust set of mechanics so that you can find your game. for me, the big elements about Altered World, even if you decide you don't want to play in the menu that we set up, the world and the lore that we've got, if you want to do your own homebrew campaign using Altered World mechanics, what it lets you do is tell your story, right? We're a very character-driven system. The choices you make at character creation matter a lot to bring that story to the front. And I come back to this over and over and over again. I've heard other people say it. I think you know several people kind of stumbled on this, and I like it. Right? When people ask me what a role playing game is, what is TTRPGs, how do you win Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of stuff. I try and explain it's a collaborative storytelling experience, right? And all of those elements are important. It's collaborative. The game master can't do it alone. The players can't do it without a game master. We all need each other. We're working together. It's cooperative. We build on everything one person brings to the story. It's every building block gets used, right? And I really like that. And you win by having fun, right? Or when everybody decides that the story has reached a satisfactory conclusion. And I think our game allows people to do that in a very meaningful way that can be kind of hard in some of the other role-playing games we're all used to. I think too much gets hung up on the game master's side of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And stories end because people get tired or they just can't make it anymore. You get to a certain stage and we've all heard it before and we've lamented it a lot. Our role-playing group recently, the highest CR creature we're going to face is the schedule monster. But when people are really motivated by the story, they work hard to show up, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. So we have a question from Soltanic, who is asking, do you have an elevator pitch intended for people who don't know anything about Shadowrun and GURPS?
I mean, that's fair. You know what? I keep forgetting that with as many years in the gaming world as I have, that I'm more familiar with some systems. So Shadowrun being, it's a cyberpunk meets magic.
So let me jump in there. If you imagine, if you know the movie The Matrix, imagine The Matrix, but with trolls and orcs, a couple of wizards, and some superheroes, all trying to figure some stuff out.
Yeah, and the GURPS element really comes in, and I have this theory that's a bit half baked at the moment, but that the percentage of a book that is dedicated of a TTRPG system that's dedicated to a specific thing can show you what is the core game loop of that system. D&D, you look at, when you look at the percentage of the rules that are dedicated to monsters, combat, and magic items, the loop becomes very clear that you're supposed to fight monsters to take their magic items so that you can fight more monsters, right? Like that's the game design loop that they're looking at. And so you show you what the core pillars are. And for us, our core pillar is character creation, and making your character exactly what you want it to be. And we accomplish that. For people who are not familiar with GURPS, GURPS is a 100% point buy system. And so when you create your character, we also use that system where you have a certain number of points that you use to build your character. Everything that you want, you can have it. But as Seth likes to say, it's like a buffet. Your plate is only so big and you only get one trip through. And so anything you put on your plate is something else you can't put on your plate. And so it is a series of meaningful decisions about what your character is and is not going to be, at least at the beginning of the game. And then you can progress them kind of however you want, largely because we don't have character classes. It's just you make the character what you want. And if you want to advance in a certain path, you put points into that path.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of skill-based games rather than class-based games. Systems, sorry.
Yeah,
It's like I always find them like too pigeonholy.
I think they have their place, um, but if you really want to, um, if you don't want your character ideas to be based on what somebody else thought was cool, then you have to avoid the idea of a class.
For sure. Yeah. Now you mentioned that also that there's a a good game needs good collaboration between player and the GM and sorry players and the GM. So does your game mechanically push this in some way, or is it like your encouraged the game mastering style? How do you go around it?
I think that's a good question. Do you have any thoughts immediately, Seth? I've got one or two that come to mind.
For me, what comes to mind is things like your advantages and specifically the drawbacks you might take. Um, I think that players communicate a lot to the game master based on how they build their character in any game, right? Like if you look at um, a ranger in third edition Dungeons and Dragons
Hmm.
3.5, you could take a favorite enemy. Well, you have this list of enemies you can pick, and whatever you pick, you're telling the game master like that's important to me. In the context of Dungeons and Dragons, I want to come up against these at least sometimes, right? And I think it's the poor um, it's a poor outcome when the game master doesn't take those things into account when they might say, well, you picked that you wanted to fight undead, but this module is more about demons or dragons or something, so you just made a bad choice. Well, throw some undead in there, right? Like that player has expressed how they want to interface with the game.
Yeah, makes sense.
Do the mechanics necessarily enforce that? No, right? Like with any game, at the end of the day, people can follow the rules or not. But I think how players and game masters build the thing together matters.
Yeah, and to dovetail on your comment, Seth, you started to allude to this, and then you kind of went in a little bit different direction. I think drawbacks in our system are you can think of them kind of like a feat that is detrimental to your character, and you take it to get additional points to spend on other
Yep.
things. And so several of these drawbacks are, I mean, some are just like purely mechanical, right? Like um, there's a trait that's hindered, and so your speed attribute might not be as high as it normally would be mathematically, and because you're just not as fast, and so you can do that as a way to kind of balance some things out and make your character the way you want it to be. But then there's other ones that are things like dark past, which is a really fun trait where it's that your character has a skeleton in their closet that is definitively dangerous for people to find out about. It's not like I cheated on my wife. It's I cheated on my wife with a mob boss's wife, and if he finds out, I'm dead. Right, like that kind of thing. We got things like that. We got weirdness magnet is another one that's really fun, where strange things just happen to people, and these are ones where the mechanics are defined, but there's a narrative that goes around the drawback, and being able to shape that narrative collaboratively with the game master during the character creation process is a big help in figuring out how the game master is going to incorporate that into their system. And so that's not necessarily a mechanical enforcement, but it's definitely um, a uh, it's definitely something that helps encourage it, right?
So rather than keeping it something like that in the character backstory, where it's like, yeah, maybe the GM can use it, maybe they cannot. It's like, nope, this is actually it's in there. Here's what might happen from that.
Yeah, for
Right.
example, Dark Past is a good example of this. We have a system in our game called verbal combat, where we take social interactions and there is a way you can run it like a combat, and the structure follows the same kind of idea. And so with Dark Past, there's this issue where if you're in a verbal combat and somebody starts talking about things that are related to your dark past, you start having penalties to your rolls to reflect how hard it is to try to steer the conversation away from the thing you're trying to keep hidden.
Okay.
So,
And there's some flexibility there in that if you want to write a backstory that talks about, something that would pretty much be a dark past, to use the example on the table here, you cheated with and had an affair with somebody who's married to the mob. You could choose not to take the drawback, right?
right.
You don't take any bonus points of character creation. You just have that in your character history, and then it's not quite as it doesn't get enforced mechanically at that point. It is something the game master can use or not. You can move the story away from that pretty easily. Whereas if you tie it to a drawback, it's going to be with you for a little bit.
Yeah, it has teeth.
Mhm. So I see that you've left kind of both doors are open, so we can
Yeah.
use it. That's really good. So
Yeah,
Dungeon Mate.
we like to emphasize player agency and freedom of choice in just about every decision we make with the mechanics. Those are questions we ask ourselves. Like, how does this impact player agency? You know, what how could this be exploited, and what makes this fun, or is it too much of a burden, too much bookkeeping for the game master or the players or whatever.
So Dungeon Mate is asking, is it maybe predetermined character expectations versus freeform character aspects? I think we might need some extra clarification on that from Dungeon Matron, because I'm not sure what she's asking exactly.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what we were talking about when her comment popped up.
I think that
And
was about
so,
the disadvantages, so that might be it. But let's see if we can get some clarification on that first. In the
okay.
meantime, Quest Bertrand is saying verbal combat sounds intriguing. It does, yeah.
We're proud of the verbal combat system for sure. I think we're always and forever trying to tweak a few more details, but we recently made another pass through on all the combat rules. And so, like in many role playing games, there's a chapter on combat, and at the end of that, you'll find rules for verbal combat. We hope people find that really enticing. It is a way to win conflicts without having to draw a steel, so to speak.
Could you give me an example of how that would be used or where that would be used?
Yeah, so there's anytime you want to resolve a situation socially rather than physically, right? There are several skills, talents that factor in. Like, let's say you've got the leadership talent, and you want to use that in order to influence how other people behave. We have rules for that, right? So trying to tell people what to do. If you want to use something more along the lines of negotiation, there's skills for that, talent for that, and a whole bunch of advantages and disadvantages that can really give you the flavor of a person who's quite good at that.
So it's kind of
And
like rather than having to role play out an entire discussion or negotiation or whatever, you go for a dice roll, or maybe you do role play it and then depending on how that goes, you can maybe give a bonus or something. Is that how that works?
right, so one cool thing about verbal combat as a concept in a role playing game is you can use the dice to supplement your own ability as a fast talker, sweet talker, smooth tongue, silver tongue kind of guy. If you've got the gift of gab and you want to run that at the table and then roll dice and say, okay, I did pretty well, uh, you can certainly do that. But a lot of times people who come to the table and they want to explore those aspects of themselves, right? Like, one thing I like about role playing games is this ability to explore aspects of ourselves in a safe space that we couldn't otherwise. So there are people who are fairly not as good at all that stuff, and getting to experience being a a socially adept character and having a robust set of mechanics that allows you to do that. Just like, the first fantasy in all of role playing games, I think, is the fantasy of violence, right? Like, I want to take a sword and kill this goblin, and here's an environment where I can do that, and nobody really gets hurt. This just expands that and says, well, okay, what if you were good at other things besides swinging?
Yeah, and reaching back to like the original, the early days of verbal combat, right? It came out of definitely a response to the D&D social interaction rules, which are virtually non-existent in 5e and 5.5. I don't know that they even existed at all in 2e, and I'd have to go back and look at
Yeah,
the
there was
systems.
something with I believe there was an initial reaction based on the highest charisma in the party, and then it could be modified based on
Yeah,
that. But yeah, I think there's a lot of tables. Yeah.
yeah. I think in it sounds like, and again, I haven't played 2e in, I don't know, 30 years or something, and so um, but it sounds like it's very similar to what we have in 5 and 5.5, but maybe just a little more crunchy, right? Because you look at the 5e social interaction rules, and it's basically you have the NPC is either friendly, indifferent, or hostile to
Yep.
you, and then it says it is possible to make rolls to change this. It doesn't say how, it doesn't say what those things really mean. Like, if an NPC is friendly to you, does that mean they're going to give you anything you want? Like, all of those kinds of things. And so what we wanted was something, what Mike and John and JP really wanted initially was something that felt like an actual contest of wills, an actual fight. And with the idea that, again, at the time, you didn't get experience for social encounters unless your game master was the kind of game master who rewarded role playing experience, which was always very subjective. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to say, hey, if you defeat somebody in verbal combat, your character gets the same experience they would have gotten for defeating them in a physical fight.
Because they overcame the obstacle anyway, just in a different way.
Right,
Okay, yeah, that
exactly.
makes sense.
And so some of the things that we've done is we added in a couple of different things where before it was mostly just contested roles and it didn't really have quite the structure we wanted. We set out to really um, line it up so that the way verbal combat plays out in terms of the structure of the turn mirrors physical combat to the greatest extent we possibly can. It's not exactly the same, but it flows very similarly. And then we also wanted to give people like different kinds of attacks that do different things. So you have quips that kind of wear people down. This is kind of like one-liners, and you're just talking trash to people. And then you have an argument that is a logical, reasoned argument that wears people down, but also has the ability potentially to instantly sway them to your side. Because you can, in a real argument with a real person, you can just say the right thing and change someone's mind. Um, and then the third is this is one of the ones that I really like, that we added. It's called a taunt, and taunts are basically all they do is you are essentially directing somebody to take an action or to do something. And this is the only aspect of verbal combat that can be used inside physical combat.
Okay.
Because what this allows you to do.
Opportunity. Yeah, I'll jump in there, Travis.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In place, man. But what we love about that is if you've built your character to be good at verbal combat, you may not be good at other kinds of combat,
Fair enough.
gunplay or whatever. So we wanted to imagine like, well, what happens if you're really, really good at verbal combat and you just like stand up and just say, everybody put your guns down? How would we model that so that there's mechanics so that there's a chance that that could happen? Now it's going to be tough, right? Like, um, but it's possible. And we really like that you can build a character that's good at what you want to be good at, and you don't necessarily have to sit back and do nothing when other things come up in the game,
Yeah,
i.e., you're good at group combat, so when the bullets start flying, you got to hunker down behind cover and do nothing. Well, you can try some other tricks.
I think that's reasonable
Yeah.
because I mean, like, not everyone who plays a strength 20 barbarian can lift 50 pounds in real life.
Right.
Yep. But I like the whole concept of that. So, Dungeon Mating clarified, when you make a druid in Dungeons and Dragons, you have kind of a predetermined idea of what that character can do, even before you select spells, armor, etc. With point by, it can't. So, yeah, from what I understand, it's literally you have a character as an open slate, and then you can plug in whatever you want in there.
Yeah, this actually touches on, small little shameless plug. A week ago, we released a video specifically talking about this on our YouTube channel, talking about the idea that character classes are a box that you put yourself into. And the idea that lots of players end up multi-classing is really a symptom of the fact that what they want is more creative control over where their character goes and less predetermined sets of abilities that a class gives you. And so, yeah, it's very much, they've got it right on. You don't have there is no thing in our game that says, okay, you made this one choice and now here are the things that you can do for the rest of the game.
Right. And interestingly, so we've talked a little bit about character creation. And so you have these character creation points, like a budget or the size of your plate as you go through the buffet, if you like that metaphor. But later on, instead of advancing your character through this concept of leveling up, I've killed enough goblins that now all of a sudden I'm better at swinging my sword, which makes a certain amount of sense. It's not an unintuitive way of approaching things, but we view experience that you gain as a spendable currency, and you can do different things with that. Uh, one of them being advance your character, right? You can choose an aspect of your character to improve by spending experience on it. And that allows you to grow in the direction you want to grow, kind of at the pace you want to get there, provided you have the XP to spend on it. And again, that just gives you freedom and choice to explore the story that you're trying to tell with this particular character.
So we're saying specifically that you could put, for example, if you have X amount of experience points, you could use them to buy, I don't know, more dexterity or more toughness or whatever. So yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you can.
You've got your primary attributes. Yeah, raise one of those. You've got talents. You can raise talents. You can buy new talents. You can get new advantages. Or if those disadvantages you took with character creation are really bumming you out, save up some XP and you can start buying the rating down and eventually eliminate it.
Okay.
Yeah. And to Seth's point, one of the things, again, he left off the other half of it, which I love, right? Is we are all about like maximum freedom, maximum agency, do what you want with your character. But we also want those decisions to be meaningful. And so the other side of what XP is used for is you can use it as an in-game currency to influence dice rolls. And so now you have this decision tension between, do I save up XP so I can become more powerful, or do I spend it right now so I don't die? And there's that is I think that's really a good idea of how to describe one of our core game design principles, is that everything should be a meaningful decision with a true tension between the two things that you're doing. I'm spending points here, and so I'm not spending them here, and that means something. It's not just that I just didn't get this thing.
Yeah, I mean, that is an early choice.
So
Questborter is saying sort of like the luck mechanic in Call of Cthulhu.
I think so. Yeah, I haven't played a whole lot of Call of Cthulhu. I played some Delta Green, which is based off of it, but it
Pretty much
is
the same
also
thing, yeah.
kind of like what's that?
Pretty much the same thing in Delta Green. It's the
Yeah,
same engine.
yeah, and so it also kind of bears some resemblance to the luck mechanic in like Tales of the Valiant, which are points that you can spend on your dice rolls as a replacement for heroic initiative. So, but yeah, similar. It's just you do it with different stuff.
Okay, and Dungeon Maiden is saying free to make a character, really sneaky, but also good at healing. Yep.
Yeah,
So when you sit down with your game master and you decide uh, what game you guys are playing in Altered World, um, one of the things the game master and the players all have to figure out is, well, how many character creation points do you get at the beginning? 15 has been kind of the rule of thumb for a long time. Travis and I have discussions of, is that too much? Like, you can do a lot with a 15 CCP character. So making a 10 CCP character is really interesting, right? Um, Even with 10 CCP, you can be pretty good at a couple of things. Um, and if you go the other direction, you want a 20 or 25 CCP character, you're really into like superhero stuff at that point. You're making really powerful characters. You can be good at lots of things.
I mean, which is
So
fine if it's the that kind of campaign you're going for, like
yeah,
cyberpunk John Wick or something like that, I guess.
mhm.
yeah, and I think there's other things that we do kind of along those same lines, right? So there's a couple of other levers that the game master has with regards to um, uh, how the game plays, right? So one is to say this is how many character creation points everybody starts with when you build your character, and as a point of reference, the average human being walking around in the game world is probably somewhere between 3 and 5, I think, CCPs. And so your characters start at probably 10, 12, or 15, depending on how you want to do it. Or you could go, as you said, superhero and roll out with 25 CCP characters. The other thing is that we have within the game it's a model, a framework for thinking about storytelling. And so it's a model, which means it's wrong, um, but hopefully it's useful, right? And so we call it genre and mode. And we look at these two different aspects where you have genre just basically refers to, and the way we use it is what is the driving force within the game world? Is it magic? Is it technology? Or is it some mixture of both? And so that we call it fantasy or sci-fi or hybrid. And then the mode of play is things like horror or action adventure or heroic fantasy or whatever. And so by combining these things, there are in the game master section, there are recommendations to change the way the dice roll mechanics work to influence the tone of things. Like basically, like if you're playing a horror game, like you really want to amp up the horror aspect, then there's things like healing is slower. Um,
Ooh.
every roll that you make, you enforce kind of a death spiral so that like as you get injured, things get harder and harder to accomplish. And so that allows you to really enforce mechanically the desired play style at the table in a way that I think other games don't necessarily do all that often. Um, the other thing that just to go back a little bit to character creation, this is something that popped into my head when Seth was talking and then it fell out. Um, within our current game world, right? If you're playing in Altered World, that core Mayu, for every character hook idea that you may have, there's almost always 3 different ways you could approach creating a character that does that thing,
Oh, okay.
whether it's through talents or whether it's through powers or whether it's through technological advancements or cyberware or things like that.
Okay, could you break
Um,
down talents and powers? I mean, like, I think we can understand what technological advantages are, but what are talents and powers in the context of Altered World?
Well, like for example, to the point of the example that was given in the chat, right? Somebody who's sneaky and good at healing, right? So you could do that by making your stealth talent very high rating and making your medicine talent very high rating,
Mhm.
and jacking the attributes that relate to those. Or you could have invisibility. You could have the power energy intensity. So you can actually use that power to make sound less intense and make yourself quiet. You could
Yep.
have healing powers. So you could achieve the same goal of what do I want my character, and then just have two or three different paths to get at that thing that end up looking very different,
Oh yeah,
but they're
absolutely.
still filling the same core role.
Nice.
And they're all viable, right?
Yeah.
One isn't necessarily better than the other.
Nice. Okay, so we've actually mentioned mechanics a couple of times. Would you like to talk about the way that Matrox work in your game? I know that you've had a video recently you're talking about the why you went with a two die 10 system. Okay, so would you like give us a quick summary of that?
Okay, you want to take it, Seth?
Go ahead, Sean.
Okay. So at core, right, our system uses just 2d10. We've added some elements where each player having 3d10 might be useful, but you don't need it. Technically, you could each get away with just having one. It's just kind of a pain in the butt, more math. But that all came out of Altered World really started being developed in the era where you had 2E D&D was what was played. So you had D20, you had to have all these different dice. And you had, calculating THACO and all that stuff, right? And there was a bunch of math that had to go on the front end. And then at the same time, you had games like World of Darkness were starting to hit the market, and Shadowrun were starting to hit the market, where you were getting these games that had dice pools. And so you didn't have to have a whole bunch of different kinds of dice, but you had to have a whole bunch of dice.
You had a whole
And
lot of them,
Mike,
yeah.
yeah, you had a whole bunch of D10s or a whole bunch of D6s. And Mike was poor. And he's like, I want a game that I can play with just 2D10. And so
Fair, okay.
that's how he started it. And since then, I feel like it's become a very elegant system in terms of it shapes the way we think about success and what that means, and difficulty and things like that. I think it's a really interesting thing. Seth, what do you got?
Yeah, ditto everything you just said, right? Like, as far as the mechanics go, there's a bit of a learning curve. I'll be the first to admit, right? But
So,
that's true of any game.
yeah, I mean, like,
If, if you're a D&D adherent, and don't get us wrong, we've got a weekly D&D game. We love D&D. We we wouldn't be where we are without it. So, but if you have a new player at a D&D table, they've got to learn all the rules, right? So a lot of times when people come to Altered World, they're coming from another system and they're starting all over, right? Like they know what role playing is and they know kind of that you can resolve things with some of these mechanics. But you got to figure out how. Um, in my experience, once somebody kind of rolls the dice a few times, it's okay, right? It's not an intimidating system to have to learn. You just have to be willing to learn a new system, and that's a stumbling block for some people. We understand that. We hope that the rules are cool enough and the world is cool enough to get people to overcome that resistance. Being able to roll 2d10, do a little bit of math on the spot to just add something and compare it to another number, that's not too much. Um, and it's hard for me to not talk about doubles at this point and exploding dice. It might be a bit of a tangent, but I just think it's a really cool thing about the game that with 2d10, you have the possibility of rolling doubles, right?
so
And whenever that
let's rewind that a bit and go back to.
all right.
Let's see if I understood the mechanics correctly. And by the way, the end is saying, "Nice, I'm poor too." So yeah, we all appreciate not having to buy 3 million dice. Okay, so
I mean, you can, but
I mean, sometimes dice have to go to dice jail. Sometimes, you find those pretty dice that you just have to have. You can buy as many as you want. You only need two at a time to play.
okay, so let's see. So if I want to do something as a player, let's say I roll 2 die 10, I add the modifiers, and if I beat 20, then that's a success, correct?
that's one way to approach it.
Okay.
The mathematically, what you just described is identical to what we do. The difference is we do the math first. We use a fixed DC or fixed success threshold of 20. So the idea is that you're trying to achieve a score of 20 on your dice, and you take the number that you roll on the two dice, you add, if you're making a talent action roll, you add your talent rating,
Hmm.
and you add your attribute rating that's related to that talent.
Okay.
And if you get 20 or higher, that's a success.
Okay.
So what we figured out is, and this is an interesting psychological phenomenon, when somebody throws the dice and then has to do the math then to figure out if they were successful, that is psychological pressure to perform math under scrutiny, right? It
Hmm.
is, a lot of people get uncomfortable in that moment, and you'll see people get flustered like trying to do the math, and it's, even though it's not hard and they're quite capable of doing it. So what we figured out is, because the DC is always 20, and we know that we have these fixed modifiers that are going to apply every time you roll the dice,
Hmm.
we'll just subtract those numbers from 20, and that's the number that has to come up on the dice. And so determining whether or not you were successful is faster. There's still some math that can happen on the back end because we use a grades of success. We have success levels that are, again, a meta currency that you can spend. But just determining did I hit or not is very simple. If I know that in order to achieve 20, I have to roll 5. If I roll a 7, I've hit. And that just is very fast.
So that's kind of pre-calculated based on the character sheet, and then you just, yep, what's that number? Go on. Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I didn't even think about it because I didn't really look into the character sheet. I just looked at the rules, but I see what you mean about removing that mental pressure of the players. So yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, and that number that you're trying to get on the dice is what we call the ARB. And so in on the character sheet, when you're looking at it, there's a column on the talents or whatever that says ARB, and that's what that means. It stands for action roll base.
Mhm.
Um, Success is a little more complicated now than it originally was. The way that the math works, it is absolutely possible to have a negative number for your ARB. So your ARB could be like negative 12, right? If you're really, really good at something, which means obviously like you can't roll under negative 12. Um, but we wanted to have an ability to um, always have the possibility of failure.
Yep.
But we didn't want to take that away from somebody who built their character. We didn't want to disincentivize people building their character that way. And so there is now a bit of a binary thing on success. You have to achieve, the dice have to meet or exceed your ARB, but the dice also must be 4 or higher. And the
Oh, okay,
reason
okay.
that 4 or higher matters is because Seth's fascination and love of doubles.
Okay, which brings us back to what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so on any roll of two 10-sided dice, you have a 10% chance of coming up with a pair of doubles, whether that's two ones, two twos, two threes, etc. And so whenever you roll doubles, something good happens, right? You get experience. You get a point of experience that automatically rewards you for being involved and active in the game and looking for ways to use your character to engage with the world, right? We want to encourage player involvement. When doubles comes up, you get XP, that takes care of that. In addition, you get to roll one more D10. So, you got two on the table, you pick up one of them, roll it again, and you add that to your result. And happily, if the improbable happens, and let's say you roll double fours, you pick up that one of those dice and roll it again. If it comes up a 4 again, you can roll it again and add that in. It's less and less likely that it'll match every single time you roll, but in this example, every time it came up a 4, you could re-roll. So that's kind of fun. Oh, and you get more XP too.
Nice.
Um,
And yeah,
but
I do love exploding dice.
yeah, double ones is a botch. So something unfortunate is going to happen. And there are interesting discussions about just what that can be, right? Like if you have a particularly low ARB, you can succeed on a botch, um, but there's just some sort of negative outcome for you. More standard would, most people, if they roll a botch, they're going to fail. Um, and then in relation to what we're talking about with this floor for ARBs, that you've got to get at least a 4. So if you roll a 2 and a 1, you've hit a 3. It's not a botch. Nothing terrible happens. You just didn't succeed that time on whatever you were trying to do. So a 3 is a real stinker of a roll because you don't get any XP. You don't get to re-roll the dice and try and salvage something. But it keeps that possibility of failure alive, and that makes things interesting, right? If success is a foregone conclusion,
What's the point in rolling the dice then? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the reason that the threshold is 4 and is because 3 is the lowest roll you can possibly make, because if you roll 2 1s,
Then
the
that's
dice are going to
a botch.
explode,
Okay.
and so you're going to get at least another 1, which would then continue to explode. So it that's why we were said, okay, even though 2 looks like it's lower, it's not lower because of the exploding dice. And so 3 is the lowest possible game roll on the dice. And so that's what we wanted to give at least a 1% chance of failure on any roll, regardless of what your ARB is.
Hypothetically, what happens if you just keep getting more ones and then just keep stacking up? What does it get even worse? It's like
no. So it just basically your total continues to go up, but it is still going to be a botch. It may be
yeah.
successful, but something bad will happen.
right. So
Okay.
the good example there is, let's say you're trying to shoot somebody. You may, in this extraordinary chain of events, roll a botch, and then let's say your next roll of dice is enough to take you over the threshold, and you meet success. Well, okay, you trying to shoot somebody, that's what you're trying to do. You shoot them, but then after that, your gun jams, or depending on how badly you botch, so to speak, maybe the gun misfires or explodes or becomes malfunctioning somehow.
Okay.
You know, there there are ways to figure that out.
Yeah, so Dungeon is saying both the first and last rolls I made in yesterday's Call of Cthulhu game were 100. So
Oh, that hurts. That hurts.
okay, and Campaigner is saying my game has similar. You can succeed and flub on the same roll. I don't think I
Nice.
played a lot of games with that kind of mechanic where you can actually succeed but still have something disastrous happen. But I do like the sound of it.
Well, I think it goes to the idea of, part of, and again, this is something we talked about in one of our videos. I think it was the same one, that roll 2d10, not 1d20, is that what we're trying to model is competence, right? That, like, as your ARB gets lower and lower, what ends up happening is you become more and more competent, right? You're more likely to succeed at tasks that are within your level of training. What and this speaks to our idea of difficulty, right? I think as a when you in a theory sense, right? The fact that we have a fixed success threshold of 20 means that our opinion is that within a given skill, all of the tasks you may perform within that talent are basically about the same level of difficulty, right? Doing one thing is not inherently harder than doing the other. There are circumstantial factors and environmental conditional modifiers that may make things harder or easier, but the task itself is not that hard, is not significantly harder or easier than the other. And so that's what that DC-20 means. And so you end up with this idea that you're able to model a character that is predictable within their talent band, as opposed to, like I said in the video, right? I know it's not rules as written, but lots of tables play that if you roll a natural 1 on a skill check, it's a critical failure. And the idea of a ranger being able to critically fail 5% of the time on not getting lost in the woods, right? That's like their core thing. Doesn't really model competence. It models kind of wild chance.
Yeah.
And it's not what we're interested in. That being said, there is one other aspect, and this gets into something we haven't talked about yet, that we call edge and hitch. And I can't remember if this is actually in the version of the quick start that's out
I
right now.
believe it's at least mentioned. Let's see, but I'm not sure I've read up to the part where it's actually explained.
I will say that it is, if it is in there, it's not the way that we use it now. So edge and hitch mechanically is the same. If you're rolling with an edge, you roll 3d10 and take the 2 best, whether that means 2 doubles or the highest score is up to you. And if you're rolling with a hitch, it's kind of like our version of disadvantage. You roll 3d10 and you take the 2 worst rolls, or 2 worst die. But what we've settled on now is, now that we've moved to this idea that there's always this 1% chance of failure. So you have to, dice has to be equal at least to 4 and be above your ARB to be successful. What we've settled on is if your ARB is below 4, you roll with edge. And what that means is that replicates the idea that you're so well trained that botches become less likely.
Okay, and I also understood that would make the levels of success more likely, because you're more likely to get doubles, you're more likely to get a higher number. Okay.
Yeah. And
Nice.
and it from a just looking at just double ones, doing that takes it from about a 10% occurrence, or a 1% occurrence, to about a 0.3% occurrence. So it pretty dramatically reduces the likelihood that, I think that's the math, right? I'd have to look it up, but it's something very similar to that. It dramatically reduces the likelihood that you'll have a botch. Conversely, if your ARB is above 20, for whatever reason, because of modifiers and whatever, then you roll with a hitch, which is the idea that, like, this is something that for me is so hard that it makes it more likely that I'm going to fail badly, right? That I'm more likely to get a botch, because you end up going to about a 3 or 4% chance of a botch.
So we're talking about like an untrained person trying to do brain surgery on a battlefield during a rainstorm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of the way the 2 dice rolls go. There are some additional roll types that are kind of like an extension of this one. The one that I find personally most interesting is what we call an accumulation roll, but I don't know if you want to go into that. Seth, is there anything else on the dice rolling mechanics that you want to talk about? Anything else you want to highlight?
We talked a whole bunch about all the double dice rolls. There are some rolls that just require a single die, high target and low target rolls, and they come up pretty frequently in the game, so they're worth mentioning.
So what kind of situation would that be?
So high target rolls are almost always a form of resistance, right? There is an effect that is being applied to you, and you're trying to resist it. So there's a couple of different examples. One, in our combat system, every time you get hit, there is a possibility your character could be uh, essentially start dying, right? Like if
Mhm.
you get shot, like you could die. Um, but there's also things like if you have the fear drawback and you encounter the thing that you're afraid of, you have to make a high target roll against your fear rating. So you're trying to roll over whatever your fear rating is. So the more severe your fear rating is, the harder it is to resist the effects of being afraid.
But is that
Is kind of
like
the
a
way that.
flat random? Sorry, like it's like that completely random, or is it based on attributes, or how's that? Does that work?
So with fear, it's how many points you choose to spend on that, or how
Yeah,
many
so
points you
here's
choose
your
to.
drawback, and
Yeah,
you choose the specific thing you're afraid of. So if you choose to be afraid of clowns, and then the game master sees that and is like, "Oh, I got something for you. Okay, it's the clown gang. They're after you." Well, you're afraid, right? So like, you need to make a roll against your fear. So if you took fear at rating 3, then you've got to roll better than a 3 on a 10-sided die, or you're going to be so afraid that you start suffering penalties to whatever you try and do.
No.
So, at character creation, some of those drawbacks look like, hey, this will never come back and bite me, right? Like this is fine. Um, Easy points, right?
yeah,
But
totally easy points.
yeah, beware when the game master says it like that. I tell you what. Um, so yeah, lots of things in the game are rating based, right? Like um, theoretically everything has a rating, or you can put a rating to stuff, and we try and put examples in there about, well, okay, fire has a rating. Well, what does that even mean? Well, let's say a match is a rating 1 fire and a bonfire is a rating 10. So you figure out what that house fire is based on that. you know
Hmm. Nice.
so that's high target rolls. Sorry, once again I get off track. uh, High target rolls, and then low target rolls are kind of the, intuitively rather the opposite, right? Like
So
you
you
want
have
to
to
get
roll
under.
under the thing. Okay.
So perception checks are a good way to run that. Um,
Okay. I'm kind of I am a software engineer by trade, and it's like one of the first questions that come to mind when I see something like this. Like, why do you have two mechanics like that are opposite to each other like that? Is like, wouldn't they work with a single mechanic?
So what we found was, and we looked at this, what we found is in general, the things where you're making a high target roll are things where the a higher rating of that thing is bad for you, right? So if you
Mhm.
have in combat, you have to resist 5 chances of death. Well, 6 chances of death is worse, right? And so
Mhm.
you want that to be a roll over so that it models the idea that it is harder to resist more chances of death. With a perception check, or we've got, this isn't necessarily codified, but like in play, we've toyed around in the idea of almost like a saving throw of doing things like a low target roll against your combat secondary attribute to like grab somebody as they're falling off of a cliff or whatever. It's a way to adjudicate things. In those situations, just by definition, having a higher perception rating is good. It means
Mhm.
you are more perceptive. And so, in order to model that with the dice, you have to say, you have to roll under it, because otherwise, then you're like, oh, well, why would I be trying to roll over something? And so it ends up being that there isn't really a way to um, use the same mechanic for both directions. What I can say is low target rolls are dramatically more common throughout anything other than combat, right?
right. So
Combat is where most of your high target rolls are going to come in.
yeah, Travis went to a con several months ago. I wasn't able to go with him to this one, but at that con, we got some feedback from players, and notably somebody said, "Hey, this low target roll, high target roll thing might get a little confusing. And we really had to beat our heads against that for a minute. And we thought about taking high target rolls out entirely if we could. They have a place in the game. We left them in, but we scaled back the number of times that you're having to do that. You can run it so that the game master makes the high target rolls if it's a little bit too much for the players to manage, especially if you're playing with newer players. Um, and typically, if you're in a position where you're making a high target roll, it's kind of a negative outcome that you're looking at. Whereas
It's
low
sometimes
target
just
roll,
drastic, I guess. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not against it. It's like I was just interested as they seem to be so similar mechanically that I was wondering why there are two of them. But I mean, even just the fact that low target is good, high target is bad. That's enough to distinguish them, and I think it's fairly.
as a
Right.
rule of
I don't think it would
there
be
might be a few
confusing, to be honest.
exceptions to the rule.
Say again, sorry.
Oh, I said as a rule of thumb, there may be a few exceptions, but I think we went through and made that
Yeah.
universal.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head where you would be making a high target roll, and it would be a good thing. Yeah, well, maybe with well, no, not even that. I was thinking it might be with we have a power called deny death, which is the idea that if somebody succumbs to a chance of death in combat, you can use this power to like turn that off. And I was thinking that maybe that would be a high target roll, but it's actually you're making a low target roll against your power rating,
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
and then the success levels have to meet or exceed the chances of death that the person succumbed to.
Yeah, that's
And
really specific and situational, but suffice it to say, bringing it back around, high
yeah,
target roll problems, low target rolls, good things.
yeah. And then what I mentioned a few minutes ago is this is actually one that seems to be, at least from some of the conversations we've had, seems to be a little bit confusing in the way that we've got it written, and so we have to go back and maybe look at that. But it's called an accumulation roll or an accumulation action roll, and the way that we describe it initially in the book, I think, is we talk about it as these are things that don't make a lot of sense to just make one roll, right? Especially in the context of like, I'm taking a very discrete action. This is things like I'm writing a piece of software and it's going to take me months. So
Mhm.
one single roll doesn't make a lot of sense. You have to succeed multiple times over the course of that period of months to be able to end up with the product you want,
Yeah,
or
and time out.
making a sculpture.
You heard Travis right. There may be times if you're playing Altered World where you're rolling dice to write software,
Okay.
because that's a thing people might want to do. Um,
I mean, it is a
and
cyberpunk world at the end of the day. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
but,
So
but sorry to interrupt, but yeah, you
yeah.
can take on bigger projects with this mechanic.
And so the way that I've started to think about how to describe it is that this is a task that the dice rolls are not just telling you whether or not you succeed or even how successful you were. They're also telling you how long it takes.
Okay.
And so, um, for example, if you're trying to hack into a system, a computer system, the way that the hacking talent works is you make one roll for every 15 minutes of tippy tapping away on the computer. And you have a threshold of success that is the defense rating of the system that you're trying to hack. And this gets into, we have three different ways we measure success. I don't want to get into a whole lot of that, but you're trying to achieve a number that meets or exceeds the defense rating of the system. And this may take you multiple rolls to do. And each roll represents 15 minutes of time. At the end of that thing, when you have met or exceeded the roll where, okay, now the defense was 8 and now I've got to 10, right? That means I have beat the system and I have 2 success levels. Those 2 success levels, we use success levels as a meta currency in game. You can spend them to make your system or to make your action more effective. Best example of this is in physical combat or verbal combat, where you're doing more damage by converting your success levels into damage. You can do them to look cool doing things, which is
It's important.
yeah, we like that. And then the third is you can make your action more efficient. And so let's say, for example, you're trying to hack a system. The defense rating is 8. It takes you 3 rolls to get to 10. You have 2 success levels at the end of that. Those 3 rolls represent 15 minutes of game time. I can choose to take that 15 minutes of game time and divide it by the number of success levels by which I exceeded the target. So now I can say this didn't take me 15 minutes, or it didn't take me 45 minutes. It took me whatever that is, 25, 22 and a half. Right. And so what it allows you to do is say, okay, here's where I want to end up. I'm going to make the dice rolls now, and we're going to see how long it takes at base. And then my additional success feeds back, and we come up with, okay, for the next 15 minutes of game time, your character is stuck at this computer. And if other things are going on around you, you either have to choose to quit doing this or not pay any attention to what's going on around you. Mm-hmm. And so it's a way to, like I said, figure out not only are you successful, how successful were you, but also how long does it take? And there's only a handful of things that we would really use this for. Hacking in game is probably one of the most common that you're going to come in.
So the end is saying, reached often on the moon. If you know, you know. I'm afraid I do not know, but
I do not know. I do not know.
Okay, but yeah, maybe we'll check it out later. Yeah, I mean, I can see this being used for stuff like very basic level hacking, climbing up a very long wall, tailing someone, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways you can do it.
Nice.
Yeah, short answer is if it's a longer term project, something that you don't want to resolve with just a roll, the accumulation mechanic will serve you well.
And
at the end of the day, if the game master doesn't want to use that role, like if you just want to say, okay, you're going to spend the next month doing this thing, and then you make one roll at the end of it, like, fine. Okay, you play that way. It's not going to not work. It's just not the same.
Yeah, we just have a way that, you can approach it.
Okay, he needs to hack a terminal and can't fight zombies while also hacking. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And does it go both ways? So, for example, if if a success takes you forwards, you make progress. If you botch, does it like slide you back, or does it just mean no progress, or does it mean like I don't know?
So I think what we went with was a botch actually reduces your progress a little bit, but just a failure is like you just don't. You spent 15 minutes and didn't get anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that sounds fair. Now we have been talking about the rules for a while, but one thing I'd like to go over is the actual art for the product and how
Yes.
BioWare looks, because yeah, I think people should see that. And
for sure.
yeah, I also think that you've got together a very good art package. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So what we're looking at here, this is so almost all of the artwork that you're going to look at. There's a couple of pieces that are by a different artist. Almost all the artwork you're going to look at here, I think, is by a woman named Ina Barbu, who is a phenomenal artist that we found. She lives over in Romania and is just incredibly skilled. And we take every opportunity we can to plug her, just because her professionalism is top notch. meets
I've actually got my
deadlines, good
site.
communication, all the things that don't have anything to do with how well she draws. Um,
Actually, I got
uh,
her site open here because it's got some
yeah,
work in progress shots of the image.
yeah. So that image is a cityscape of a portion of the main urban center in our game world. It's a place called New Tech. And kind of what you're looking at there is what we call the primary shaft. Um, yeah, Blade Runner vibes for
Totally, yeah.
sure. Definitely heavy influence there. Um, but the idea is that that shaft, that bright circle in the center, is, I think we ended up, I'd have to look back on the scale of it, but I think it's about like 5 kilometers across. And it's a central flyway that goes down. Originally, it was 11 miles. I think we did a little bit of math change on that, but it goes very, very deep. And the way to describe that primary shaft is you think of New York stacked on top of Tokyo, stacked on top of Mexico City, stacked on top of Manila, like just this incredibly super dense urban living that goes down into the earth rather than going up. There are also structures in there that are that she's representing there that we call the megas, which are these very, very tall structures. And so the city goes, basically ends up being somewhere around 5 kilometers from the highest point to the lowest point. Um, and the total urban area houses somewhere in the vicinity of 700 million people. Super dense, and it's only about twice the size of New York City. So I think it was like 90 square miles, whatever that turns into in kilometers.
Remind me, is this where all the trouble starts in the backstory, or is it a different one?
That's the one that's talked about in the backstory.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you can see there's two versions of this she did for us. One that has these VSTOLs or these rockets kind of flying around. The other one is without them. We think they both serve a good purpose, depending on what you want to look at. But just we cannot speak highly enough of her work.
I agree. And I mean, the whole design is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, we love it.
Okay, but also
So what's the next one you
this is the map of the place.
Yeah, so this is a top-down map that was done for us by a couple of ladies out of Australia. They're known Grim Maven Maps is their Patreon that they go for. This one, when they were building it, was really funny. They figured out the asset limitation of Incarnate because they had more than 10,000 individual trees in there, and they had to flatten things out so that they became less. But what you see there is you've got this kind of dense, normal dense city. You've got these hyper dense where the numbers are. Those are the shafts. The prime one, number one, is what we just talked about, primary shaft. There's a couple of them that they're all kind of I think they're number two. Those are just housing shafts, and so there's basically like apartments and clinics and mini marts and stuff like that, but it's not really a full city. 4 is more like the primary shaft. I think it's called Barton, and it is closed off from the top. It houses a school of mages at the top, and so the first several layers you cannot access unless you are a mage.
Okay.
And so you physically can't get in there. And then down in the bottom right, that is the corporate headquarters of New Tech. And that number 3 is the original shaft that was transported over into our world as depicted in the intro that's on the quick start.
Okay, so
They just did a phenomenal job of this.
I like the semi-organic shapes going on here. Not sure what those are though.
Those are the megas. So those are
okay.
buildings that are 1 to 3 kilometers tall. They're made out of steel wrapped in industrial diamond. as a construction material so that they have a good strength to weight ratio. And they do that. You could also see up on the northern edge there by the lake. That's Lake Erie, by the way. This is physically set on top of where Erie, Pennsylvania is. But that's an area where the ultra wealthy live, as you can see by how spaced out their houses are.
Mm-hmm. And also at that scale, those houses are gigantic.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so this is super cool. And so basically, you're saying that they hit the asset limitation for trees. Is that, do you mean that they put in all those trees individually there?
It's a stamp, and so there's different ones depending on how many trees you end up. You don't have to like click 10,000 times. You can like
Ah, okay.
click and drag, but it does treat them as all individual trees until you tell it to make them
Ah,
all
okay.
one thing of a forest. So
Yeah, I mean, like, I love this map. It's super detailed. And I think next we're going on to character art. Yeah.
Seth, you want to talk about her? Can you see her?
Who we got?
It's Shinto.
I can't see the screen.
Oh, that's Shinto.
Oh, Shinto, yeah. Our psionic dweller. She's what we call a Calcatra. That's one of the choices you can make in character creation to have supernatural powers. There's several different avenues to get there. Calcatra is one. They are able to use their powers very, very quickly. The trade-off is their powers usually are not as strong. They won't have as high ratings typically. Um, Shinto is kind of set up to be an assassin and infiltrator, and use some of her powers to take people down with psychic attacks. She's also not too bad with a sword. She's one of the 10 characters you can play if you download Extraction Ostinato. That's free to play starter kit. So if that gets your interest, she's fun to play for sure.
And did you mention that she's a dwerg? I didn't catch that one way or the other.
We can mention it now. She is also a dwerg. That is the species. Kind of think dwarves, right? Fantasy dwarves, short and squat, uh, pretty pretty durable, able to tank a little bit of extra damage, and very very long lived.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see.
Oh, this guy. This is the drama boy. You want to take this one?
The, ah,
The drama,
is that drama? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
yeah. So there was sort of a bad actor in this city of New Tech who was giving the political uh, structure grief, right? His name is Barack Nashur, and he's a bit of a freedom fighter. And like I said, the powers that be weren't real happy. The problem is he's a very very powerful Sorane, right? Another aspect towards getting physical supernatural powers.
Okay.
Sorane tend to be kind of physically based. They have enhanced body attributes and everything like this. And Barack Nashur is just incredibly strong. He's an icon for his people. He's a Tim Beer. He's interested in freedom and equality for everybody, and he's not afraid to use violence if that as a means to that end. And so, because he's so powerful, the political structure had to come up with a way to deal with him specifically. So they invested a lot of time and money and technology in creating the Defense Response Mitigation Agency. And
Okay.
these super cops are endowed with a whole lot of cybernetic enhancements to the point where they're practically immortal, and um, they tend to shoot first and ask questions later. They're motivation is to protect new tech, and they'll level a city block to do it if they have to, right? If that's what it takes to contain a threat, they'll look at the numbers, and if their dispatch could solve a problem, it's a problem where they may have to sacrifice a lot of people, and they'll do it without a thought. So they're incredibly capable. They should be incredibly scary if you live in New Tech and you see one. Um, you're hoping that you see them as they're passing by.
Okay, and the end says the shoulder pad looks very judgmental.
Yeah, we did lean pretty heavily on for this piece of artwork. We leaned pretty heavily on some of the elements of the Judge Dredd costume
yeah.
style. What you can see there is that badge there of the tragedy mask.
Mm-hmm.
Within the narrative, that badge actually changes. So when they're just kind of walking around and not actively engaging a threat, it's the comedy mask. And then when they're actively engaging, it turns into the tragedy mask. And so, like, if you're just a person and you see one of them, it gives you a chance to like maybe run away. But yeah, because they just don't care. They're as Seth alluded, they start out as Soranes and then they are heavily cybernetically advanced.
Okay.
Enhanced, so they are nigh unkillable.
Nice.
Oh, this guy. This is arguably my favorite character. So, Seth, guess.
Is it Suleiman?
It's Temujin.
Oh, yeah, that makes more sense. Temujin, yeah.
So, this guy is a priest. He's a priest of a deity known as Takatis, which is the machine god. And in kind of abstract terms, you could even go to the idea of Takatis represents that spark of creativity that we point towards technology, but he is very much machine oriented. There's a couple of things about the Takatis was no bones about it, was heavily influenced in the original days by the AdMech from Warhammer 40K.
Yeah, I was just going to say that he's giving strong AdMech vibes except for the Crocs.
Yeah, so what we wanted to go with here for this character is, one, he is in the midst of a religious ritual. So if you zoom in on his face, what you can see there is that this is essentially a voice emitter that is magically melding into his body and replacing his mouth, that it is becoming a part of his body. And so once a month, these priests of Takatis take some kind of technological item and meld it into their body. It's not the same as having a cybernetic. It is actually a part of their body. It is alive. And so there's this kind of, you're awakening the machine and simultaneously absorbing it into their body at the same time. We wanted to lean into the idea that this would probably be this kind of mixture of pain and ecstasy, in the religious sense of ecstasy. And so we really kind of wanted to lean in the body horror here. And then if you scroll down on his abdomen, he's got essentially a feeding tube because he replaced his mouth and he can no longer eat. The reason he's in bike shorts with just this like homespun robe and wearing one Croc is it was really, we kind of wanted to emphasize the idea that this is a person whose aim is to transcend being a human. And so he's not at all concerned with the trappings of clothing or anything like that. And it's like, I need a shoe on my right foot because my cybernetic leg on my left foot is an inch taller. And so I need the Croc, and this Croc works, right? And so that's really what we were going for, is somebody who is less concerned with the flesh and more concerned with the machine. He is a very interesting character in play because he's a priest. That's another one of the Nayashe. the thing about priests is their powers can be as powerful as they want them to be. But there is a point at which asking for a power above a certain level for each character is going to take a long time. And so they can trade prayer for power, is kind of how that works.
Okay, so it's more like kind of a ritual thing, ritual spellcasting kind of thing.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, is one way to look at it.
So the end says, hey, you don't know what sort of footwear the Admech wear under those robes. That's fair. No, I don't. So yeah, from now on, in my head canon, they're all wearing Crocs all the time.
Yeah. Oh, this is Crutch. Seth, you built this character. Talk about him.
Crutch is a Morthai, and they're a species of aliens that make contact with humanity after we have this dimensional shift that we haven't really talked about too much. But that dimensional shift opened Earth up to a kind of particle radiation called the flux. And the Morthai need the flux to live. So once we had this industrial accident that ripped Earth or ripped a city-sized chunk of Earth back a few centuries and across a dimension, well, now the Morthai found another place where they could live. And flux worlds are kind of rare, so they're interested. They're powerful Ninshene, which is another kind of Neos, another way to get supernatural powers. And so they just opened a portal and came to Earth from their world. And they're inscrutable. They have business acumen for sure. They're merchants. They're interdimensional merchants, and they're interested in trade and knowledge. So humanity built a relationship with them very cautiously for reasons. And Crutch is a physician by trade. He's got an interest in cybernetics for sure, and xenobiology, because to him humans are aliens, right? So he's an interesting character to play. He's got a few powers because he is Ninshene, so he can like turn invisible and phase through walls and stuff. But interestingly to me, he doesn't have any powers or talents that are immediately applicable in a combat situation. He's a bit of a healer, and that makes him interesting to play, I think, to find a character that doesn't shoot guns or swords or cast fireballs or whatever.
And they have a pet giant spider named Vito.
Yeah. He doesn't understand pets, right? So humans have pets. Sure, we'll get this spider thing.
Yeah, it's like it's his way of trying to assimilate and getting it very wrong.
Which is pretty much all over, right? Like he's trying. He's really, really trying. And when we keep saying he, for people who care about pronouns and stuff like this, the biology of the Morthai is very interesting. They go through these 4 life stages that are inherently tied to their ability to reproduce. They don't have gender as not a biological or sex kind of gender, and so we use pronouns for Crutch. He tends to go by he, but you can just as easily go it or they, I guess. For people who care about that, it's there. Just makes the thing a little bit more alien and interesting to my mind.
One of the other things, Seth, that I thought was fun when we were working through how this worked, because their reproductive cycle is very complex, and we don't have to go into it, but it basically means that their relationships between individual Morthai are way more convoluted than ours are, right? They don't have a mother and a father. They have 3 separate Morthai that produce one. And so what we've decided is that in conversation with humans, they've just given up on trying to explain the way these relationships all work. And everyone is uncle, auntie, or cousin, and that's it, right? Like that's just what they've settled on. And it works. I think it helps, like you've said, Seth. I think it helps accentuate the alienness of the creature.
I know we
Yeah.
haven't mentioned the. Oh, sorry, please go on.
Oh, eventually we're going to get around to finishing this. It's in the works, but we have kind of a Call of Cthulhu-esque adventure for Crutch that is forthcoming. It'll be very puzzle-based, hopefully lean into the horror aspect a little bit more. I'm looking forward to when we can get that finished and get that published.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that was going to be a lot of
fun.
fun.
That sounds like fun. So I know we haven't talked about the flux yet, but if I understood correctly, that's like these guys needed to live, but it's toxic for everyone else, or it's like radiation for everyone else.
Yeah. So within the narrative setting or the narrative background, you had, when this initial defining event happened that we call the Great Divergence, the world was completely irradiated with flux radiation, and it basically killed off about 90% of the human population globally. But the people who survived are able to sustain with it. So the world is still awash with flux radiation. The way I tend to think of the flux to describe it is that if you imagine the idea of string theory, this idea that every possible combination of events has some universe where it happened, if that became a substance, that's what the flux is.
Nice. Okay, so
Yeah,
Gail is asking, so is this like the demons from Jewish mythology forming one greater demon? I thought it was like, no, they just, I don't know, three of them put together another one, rather, they don't become that one.
Yeah, no, it's at the most basic level, Morthi are a symbiotic organism. They are essentially an amoeba with that cloak that it's wearing is actually a colony of bacteria. And that colony of bacteria is what allows it to become sentient. And so the way they reproduce is one Morthi provides a portion of their amoeba gel entity. Another Morthi provides some of their bacterial colony, and a third hosts the development of the new Morthi. And so Seth came up with a really great description of how this ends up working. What was it? Do you remember?
Sorry, that was more than 5 minutes ago, and I've slept since.
I think it was. I think. Oh, it was. It was your bit about. It's kind of like the. So it's kind of like the three body problem. That the product of Morthi reproduction is, it draws from three, and so it becomes highly unpredictable what it's going to be like in terms of the individual traits.
Yeah, on earthly biology, what is it, your Mendelssohn tables, right? And you look at dominant and recessive genes, you can map out kind of what the likelihood of anything being expressed is. It's far more chaotic and variable on the Morthi front, that's for sure.
You put a lot of thought into this, didn't you?
We're nerds.
We've had some time.
Yeah, that you have. And Lisa says that's definitely King in Yellow vibes.
Yeah, that yellow is actually their essentially their skin color. It does darken it lightens over time as they move through their life. So when they're first born, they're almost kind of a yellowish brown, and then they move to this honey color, which is kind of when they tend to sit in most of their gameplay life. And eventually they fade, and in their latter stages of life, they can almost become white as they progress.
Okay, we're going to get back to the others in a second, but yeah, I really want to show this one because this is one of my favorite character illustrations.
This guy, this is another one that I really, really like. Seth and I collaboratively came together with this guy. This is Grigor. Grigor's a lot of fun. So Grigor is a gnome. In our game, gnomes have recombinant DNA. And so Every gnome is wildly physiologically different from every other gnome. The only unifying characteristic between them all is an obsession with gadgets, and that they all have bumpy skin to some degree or another.
Okay.
And so this character, as a character, is normal. He does not have powers, but gnomes, when you play a gnome character, you get a certain number of points that you can use. You can purchase body part powers as if you had powers. And so we decided to replace one of his arms with several tentacles, and those tentacles have eyeballs on them. This is all tied in mechanically. Because he has extra eyeballs, he has an increase in his ability to perceive things. So he basically sees everything that happens within about 30 feet or 10 meters. But what we also worked in was a drawback: preoccupied. It's relatively minor, but basically the idea is that his brain is constantly processing so much visual input that it actually, so he's got this elevated perception because he's got all these extra eyes, and then his perception is actually reduced by the preoccupied trait, because he's trying to muddle through all this stuff.
Yeah, that's understandable.
What we envisioned this character
concept.
What we envisioned this character is he is an industrial spy that specializes in deep cover. And so he is in the adventure. He is one of the characters. These are all characters you can play in our introductory adventure. He is a janitor at the corporation where the players are targeting. And so what this means is one, if you pick this character for your PC, then you get some advantages. Like, you have the map is fully laid out because you know the building, and you have a key card that can access basically anything in the building. And so in some ways it makes it a lot easier. The other thing is that if you have a party that doesn't choose this, and if nobody chooses Grigor, you also have the ability to introduce him as an NPC as the game master, because what we did find out is within the 10 characters, there is, I think, one party. There's one small number of combinations of characters where basically the only answer that they have is to murder everyone in the building. And so if you have players that pick those characters because they resonate with those characters, but they don't necessarily want to play just a combat fest, you can introduce this character as an NPC and help steer them around as a way to do that.
So Dungeometry is saying this was custom made for her?
We love to hear that. We love to hear that.
Chris Bertrain says at least he's tidy. And the end said downloaded. So
thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be super honest. I mean, like, if this character was just a simple janitor rather than a spy, I would still love playing something like this.
He's a lot of fun. Well, the other thing too is gnomes have a trait called gadget, which basically gives you a pool of points that you can use to create an object that has any power you want it to have. And we actually didn't want to include all of the powers in the quick start. I think our game has, it's either 130 or 150 distinct powers. And so, which you can think of like spells. And what we only wanted to do is we only wanted to include the ones that characters actually have, just to keep the book down. And so what we did was we gave a series of, 5 or 10 different preset combinations that a player can just be like, oh, I'm going to pick this. And he's got things like supervision goggles that like they give him like thermal vision and X-ray vision and radar and all that stuff, but it uses up all of the gadget points. Like with gadget, you spend the points and then they're gone. And then you have to spend experience to replenish your gadget rating. But gnomes get this trait as a species trait. So it's a lot of fun. In gameplay, in the full game, like it's literally anything you want to do. And And this is a way to really screw with your game master, to be honest. Because if you're a really creative player, you can derail anything with Gadget.
Okay.
It's a lot of fun.
Look, when I read the quick start, I was like, okay, this setting is absolutely unhinged. Now, after talking to you, I'm certain that this setting is absolutely unhinged, and I really just want to play it.
Well, we
Well,
love
we're
to
glad
hear
hear
that.
that. We hope lots of people feel that way. To bring it back to where we started,
Hmm.
we're fans of the game first and foremost, right? Like
Yeah.
we were playing this game and we loved it so much. That was the conversation Travis and I were having a few years ago. It's like, well, wouldn't it be great if more people could get to play this game? And we really hope that people will download it and have a good time. Check out our YouTube videos. We're getting better and better at making YouTube videos. That credit goes to Travis. He's really learning that craft. But
Roots.
we're just trying to get the word out, and hopefully people will fall in love with this game like we did, and add it to their game night.
So Seth, the character that's on the screen now is Soleimane,
Ah, so amazing.
and it's the original version with Snowball.
Right on, right on. So Suleiman is a Timon Beard, which think troll, right? Really big, really strong, uh, huge horns, tusks, and um, he's a wild sider. He doesn't enjoy polite society very much, and he's a scout. He's kind of a failed soldier in some ways, so he's got a lot of training and really just an uncanny talent for ballistics. So he's got this friend named Snowball, this giant mammoth with this artillery platform mounted on her back, and we couldn't bring Snowball into the free to play quick
Aw.
start extraction ostinato. But when Soliman gets his own adventure, which he will, Snowball will come along for the ride for sure.
Yeah.
So, Suleiman's also a Sorine, so he's got access to some supernatural powers. Among other things, he can turn into a squirrel. And when we've played this with
What?
folks, the amount of people who find horrible things to do while in the process of turning into a squirrel at inopportune times, uh, it, it's kind of a running joke at this point. But the idea of this huge, 1,500 kilogram troll
Uh,
type massive creature turning into a squirrel, running at somebody, and then in midair turning back into his full self with like
Naked.
massive people.
Oh
People
no.
have had fun with his abilities, that's for sure.
So,
Yeah.
let me get this straight. Assuming that it was the full, not the quick start time, like the full rule and everything. This could be a starting character. I mean, having like a
Oh
mammoth
yeah.
with an
Yeah, all these 10 characters, we made them with 15 CCPs, right? They get bumped a little with some of their drawbacks, but they
Mhm.
started with 15 CCPs. And the idea is character creation is a little complicated, and on a quick start, free to play,
Mhm.
we'll just give you 10 free gems. Pick the one that, look at the pictures, whichever one calls to you, play that one. And if that gets you hooked on the game or gets you intrigued and you want to learn more, then you'll be able to turn to our other products and get the character creation and all that. But this is just to get people's interest and show them kind of the mechanics a little bit, and that this is a fun game to play.
So Karl, real quick, I think I heard a different question than Seth did. I want to make sure that this is clear. So Snowball started from just saying, "Hey, we want him to have a mammoth as a pet
Okay.
in the image for scale, right? Because that's a full size mammoth, and Soleimane is taller than the mammoth. Um,
Shit.
but and then it morphed into like Seth then it's like we knew he wanted this image, and then Seth created this really cool character who has a background as a forward observer, and then it was like, oh, wouldn't it be really funny if the mammoth had a howitzer on its back, and that's kind of where we ended up. So the way that I envision this, and the way that this will probably work in the adventure that features Solimane,
Mm-hmm.
Snowball is his own 15 CCP NPC character.
Okay.
So it's not like you're spending part of Solimane's points on having a pet, although there's a way you could do that. You could essentially, what we have a trait called ally that would allow you to have an ally that could come and help you. And so we didn't mechanically tie this to Snowball in that way with Solimane's character, but you could do that. So Snowball is a Sorene in his own right. So he's a Sorene mammoth. He's intelligent enough to speak and like whatever, and is envisioned as his own NPC that would make an appearance, but probably play a fairly limited role in Solimane's adventure.
Cameo, as it were.
Yeah, basically a shooting cameo.
Okay, I thought the gnome was the peak of insanity, but this is just getting better.
I don't know if we've hit the peak yet. I can't remember who's coming up next.
Okay, so let's see.
Oh
Okay, some vaguely elven looking lady.
Oh yeah, this is Maeve. Do you want to take her, or do you want me to talk about her?
We call Maeve the puppet master. She
Oh,
is a she, which is like an elf, Sidhe, the Gaelic term, right? She tend to excel at being mages, and she went to school and became a mage. She's also kind of dark, right? Like all the powers that she learned, and mages have to deliberately learn their powers. They don't get them accidentally. They're all kind of like enchantment school. And if there's a video floating around on YouTube, I can't remember who did it. Maybe a couple of people have talked about enchantment school being the most evil of the magics available to you in D&D. Like, forget necromancy. Enchantment is like, messing with people's free will.
yeah, I
Well,
completely
Maeve
agree with
takes
that.
the volume up to 11, right? So she's got ways to take over people or just make them do her bidding. And she's really good at that. Trade-off, she's a little bit on the frail side. She is not a frontline fighter by any means. But yeah, she's an interesting one. I don't think we've seen too many people play her in Extraction Ostinato in the conventions that we've gone to and put this out there. But the one or two that have really learned to respect the power that a mage can bring once they've had a few moments to prepare. And if she can get her hands on somebody and turn them into her puppet, then she's got quite the advantage.
And to be fair, we had one player that really leaned into the darkness of this character. It got there was a moment where I was like, do we need to like pause the game for a second and like do an intervention here, bro? It got pretty wild, but yeah, she's got powers that like Seth said, she can drive people like a meat puppet or like a meat mech.
Okay.
And so it is, and I think she's also, didn't you also like she's tied in with some kind of a criminal organization?
Yeah, again, not an accident. She's not necessarily a good person and doesn't hang out with good people.
Yeah. Okay, so this one, these next two were by a different artist. I'm probably going to butcher his last name. He's a Dutch gentleman from, I think, in the vicinity of Amsterdam. Jimmy Nige, I think it's Nijs. And so I don't know that he ever pronounced his last name, and I don't know that I ever asked it like a fool, but that gentleman right there, his website goes up and down as he moves between freelance work and not, but he produced these last two characters for us. So this is Vicky. Vicky is what's known as a Lorcas. They are the second of the three alien species that we have in our game. They are four-armed blue space gorillas. that are incredibly strong, and by culture, they are pacifists. Um, as a species, they have the trait trauma that is triggered by instigating or initiating violence. And so, if he has to start a fight, he suffers pretty severe penalties and drawbacks as a result of that,
They have
because
no
he was
problem ending
raised
the fight,
among
though.
them. What's that?
They have no problems ending the fight, though.
Yeah, they just don't start it.
Yeah.
But so what we were exploring here is the idea of what would it look like if you had a street level mob sergeant that was completely nonviolent, had a clean record because he never got in fights, and or just was able to talk his way through it. And so this is one of the characters that is a socially oriented character. He's got a couple of things that play in. Uh, he's got a trait called presence that basically when people interact with him, they have to make a roll against his presence rating, and that imposes penalties on their ability to interact with him. He's very charming, and he's very skilled at verbal interaction. And so what and he's also intimidating, right? So what we kind of played
No,
with
really?
is this idea. What we played with is this guy who's very large. He's physically intimidating, and you just walk up on him, or he just walks up on you, and your initial reaction is, "Oh crap, this thing is huge, and he's going to hurt me." But then he's really charming and glib, and it's like it throws you so off balance that it makes him really hard to resist when he talks to you. And in the game, what we wanted to do with him was we gave him a shield. And so he's got essentially like a modern or a super modern riot shield.
Hmm.
And he uses that to, if combat actually starts, he uses that to protect himself to get within grappling range. And then he will just grab people and wrap them up, and then try to calm things down after that. Is kind of his way of dealing with things. This guy's a lot of fun. We also gave him as kind of a nod to, um, yeah, and to that comment, he does have a lot of influence, I think, from the Beast in terms of the way he looks, and that's partly just because he's blue. I don't know why Mike specifically decided to make them blue, but they did. But we gave him the talent. He's a pilot as well, and so it gives him the ability in some of these future adventures where piloting might play a factor in the game, flying a VSTOL.
Okay.
Trying to think, anything I missed on him, Seth?
No, I mean, you hit the high points for sure. Mob, enforcer, charming, Lorcas. Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
he's a lot of fun. All right, Linda.
We did a video on Linda pretty recently. She is a Riaz, the third alien species that you can encounter in Altered World. A matriarchal warrior society of these animalistic uh, aliens that value um, uh, combat prowess a lot, and demonstrating your fitness to survive through combat. And
Is this the species that comes from a planet with no metals? Or is
Yes.
okay, okay.
yeah, they're from a planet called Barakasamic, and that's just a lot of fun to say. So feel free to say it as much as you want. Barakasamic. Linda is from Barakasamic illegally. She doesn't have uh, legal status to be on Earth, and so she got here after kind of a kerfuffle on her homeworld. She made the wrong people mad and just thought it was prudent to get out of town and get real far out of town. And now she's kind of stranded on Earth. She fell in with some people who, surprise, surprise, are not treating her real well. They've got her under their thumb. She has to work for them to pay off her debt, and they don't pay her enough to pay off her debt, so they call in favors regularly and have her do certain tasks for them that tend to lead towards violence, right? Like she is just a whirlwind in combat. She has talents and traits that make her incredibly effective at getting in close with a bladed weapon and turning people into quivering piles of goo that used to be alive.
I think you had mentioned that she could get up to 11 attacks in a turn or something, just by the way the stuff interacted together.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it actually comes out to 15.
Ooh,
And that's not in a turn. So our system leans back on. Remember back in the day with D&D, you had turns and rounds where a
yeah, yeah.
round was 10 turns. We kind of lean on that a little bit. We have what we call phases, which represent 1 second of time,
Ah, yes.
and a round, which is 4 phases. And so she can do 15 attacks in a round, which is still from an action economy
It's
perspective.
a lot.
You still figure if you were to just expand the time scale to the D&D turn, that would be like being able to make what is that going to be? Something like 23 attacks in a D&D combat turn,
yeah.
which is silly.
She's going Nova a little bit if you do that. You can't do that all the time, every time, but it is a thing that Linda can do. And even if she doesn't go completely Nova and expend all of her resources to do that, she's still really effective. She's going to make lots of attacks, and she's going to be effective with those attacks.
Nice.
That's her main focus. She is there to be a combat oriented character. A lot of these other characters have they exist on this spectrum where you've got some like Crutch who bring no combat ability to the table at all, and then the other end of the spectrum is Linda, where that's really what she excels at. So everybody can find some one of these characters that has somewhere on that spectrum and hopefully appeals to how they want to play the game.
And I also like that the all the characters are actually competent because it's not like sometimes you get starting characters that are like, nope, we are absolutely useless at everything.
Yeah,
Even if that's not what the narrative of the game would be like. But yeah, I think this,
yeah, for sure.
the way these are chosen is really good.
Did we
And I,
overlook our den?
No, it doesn't look like he's got all of the characters up there. I don't know if that's because I gooned up in providing the shortcuts or if they just didn't choose all of them. Looks like
there's
the last one that's in there is Blondie. If you want to talk about her, that would be the orc, the third one in on the top row.
oh, sorry, I missed this one. Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead and talk about Blondie. She's your favorite.
Yeah, Sergeant Victoria Sanchez, aka Blondie. She's an orc. Um, so in kind of the idea of subverting expectations, which we really try and lean into in this game, older editions of Dungeons and Dragons wanted to paint orcs as just these bestial monsters who couldn't be very smart. They were strong, they multiplied fast, and they were chaotic, evil monsters. So orcs got reimagined in that context, right? Well, what if they weren't mindless monsters? What if they were military geniuses? And um, so Altered World orcs all have some degree of proficiency with military tactics.
hmm
A lot of them end up going into the military for that reason. And that can cause other problems, like they might be better at knowing where an attack is going to be than the officers in charge of them. And so sometimes orcs have a reputation for getting in trouble for just leaving their duty post because they know nobody's going to attack it, right? Um, they're they're like, well, yeah, my time can be better spent somewhere else. Blondie is one who went into the military. Uh, she's got a pretty good backstory. She's seen combat. She's been injured. She's got a cybernetic arm because, you know, she was in an accident when she mounted an unsanctioned rescue mission to go after some of her former comrades that were in a bad way.
Finger laser.
And
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Is that
Finger laser? Is that what you said?
yeah.
Yeah, that was just a little kind of poking fun at, hey, you know, she's got this cybernetic arm, and why not give her a laser pointer too, so that, you know, when she's giving PowerPoints, lectures in front of, or briefings in front of the brass, she can point more effectively from across the room. She's normal, which means that she doesn't have a Naosh or any supernatural powers, so to speak, which allows her to focus a lot on her talents, right? She's as an orc proficient in military tactics, and she's, you know, capable with a gun. If she needs, if things get down to where she's got to use a knife, things are pretty bad. But she excels at leadership and being able to kind of control the battlefield by setting her allies up to be in a good position and understand what the enemy is going to do and take advantage of that.
Nice.
From an artistic perspective, if you can zoom back in on that arm that's got the laser pointer there, this is one of the areas where this piece was also done by Ina Barbu, and she worked with us really, really well. One of the things that we've in our system, despite what you saw on Temujin's character, where he had this very obvious cybernetic augmentation, most people who have in our system or in our game world, cybernetic augmentation that is obvious is considered trashware, is what we call it. And the idea is that cybernetics have advanced to the point where, to the unaided eye, it essentially looks just like a regular arm or whatever. And so what we wanted to go for here with her arm was, it was, you know, she's got a cybernetic arm from just below the elbow down, but how do you show that if cybernetics look normal? And so what we went with was this idea that she's got a band, and that arm is now theoretically kind of detachable. And that's kind of a narrative element that we use with her sometimes, that this arm can come off. It doesn't have a mechanical impact on it. And then we just chose to draw a little circuitry on the arm. And I felt like Ina did a really good job of making that very subtle. The coloration is distinct enough to kind of catch your eye, but and let you know that something's going on, but not necessarily super glary as like, hey, she's got a robot arm.
So it's not the first thing that draws attention in this image. It's like,
yeah. And so she's also got a cybernetic eye, if I remember correctly. Oh yeah, both of them, but they look like normal eyes. So she's a lot of fun. There is one other character that I think you don't have up on your board. His name is Lestrato. Just real quick to talk through him. He's a dem, which is kind of like a halfling. Within our game world, they are all the things that halflings are. They tend to be. He's just that one right there. There you go, right there on the edge. He is. They are, you know, sneaky and charming and acrobatic and nimble and all those things. Lestrato's story is that he was an actor. He kind of grew up on the streets, got into acting school, made it as an actor, and then during a shoot, there was a stunt involving a gun that went very badly, and one of his co-stars was killed. And so that ended up kind of getting him blacklisted from the industry. He was uninsurable. And then he ended up back on the streets and acts as a con man. What's kind of going on in this picture, if you zoom in on the cards, it's another one of those subtle details. I don't know if you can zoom in on that image, but I don't think I can. It's a subtle detail. The card that he has is actually a cybernetic or a computerized card. And so he's cheating by changing the 3-card Monty card as he's flipping it. And so he works as a con man. He is another verbal combat character. He is incredibly good at verbal combat. This is the character that we wanted to say, like, if this guy stands up in the middle of a gunfight and says, "Put your guns down," there's a very good chance that at least some of the combatants are going to do that, at least that one phase.
Right, but he has to stand on a box to do it.
Yeah. And we gave him, because of his background, he's somewhat phobic of guns. He prefers to deal with a blade. He has a gun that he almost never tries to use. It's kind of like a last resort because it does trigger some bad stuff for him. So he's a lot of fun.
So then
So
Jamaica is
all these
saying, so he's
characters,
like Peter Dinklage in Game of Thrones.
What were you saying, Seth?
I was just saying, these are all pre-gens in the Extraction Ostinato starter kit. They're all a lot of fun to play. They have a backstory. They have mechanics. If you like playing those, you bring your own personality to the character as well. Have fun with them. That's what we say. Just figure out the ones that you look at the picture, it resonates with you, and explore the mechanics of what each of these characters can do. And that's the nice thing about Extraction Ostinato as a sort of standalone adventure is it is kind of replayable, right? Because okay, well I did it with Vicky. Now let me see what happens when I take Blondie through this.
Okay.
Oh shoot, you can get whole different outcomes based on the skill sets and the choices that these characters might make.
I mean, from uh, from what I understand, it's like you could actually run this scenario with a squirrel. That's what one of the things I got out of this.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I mean, from what we were discussing earlier, I mean, you could run through this scenario as a squirrel.
As a squirrel, yeah. If you wanted to do that, you could. It would be very interesting.
His father died in an ammunition factory explosion. Ouch. And I've got a halfling, and I'm not afraid to use him. Okay. So
So
last two images in here, I think are
yeah,
a
yeah.
unicorn.
So this is a unicorn that was done for us by an artist whose first name is Brandon, but he goes by the name Gamma Trap. You can find him um, on the website, and I think he's most active on Threads primarily. Um, and well, Seth, why don't you talk about the unicorn? You feel most strongly about them.
Yeah, so again, not your grandmother's unicorns, right? Coming back to that idea once again of subverting
Mm-hmm.
expectations. And what if unicorns were a little bit more primal, a little darker, and the idea that this species of characters you can play, the Tim and Veer, uh, part of their shtick, one of the things that they have as a species is the animal handler talent. They were um, created to be animal handlers at fantasy resorts. And that gets into the backstory of the game. There's a lot of detail there, and we can
Mm-hmm.
go into that if we decide to. But there are only like 30 unicorns out there, 29 now. One of them actually managed to get killed, I believe. And they each link up with a Tim and Veer, and the unicorns are just incredibly powerful. They kind of are able to transcend the cosmos in really mysterious ways. And I think there's a lot that we can develop there. Travis and I have tossed some ideas around, but we're just responding to what was in the original game. It's an interesting position to be in because sometimes we didn't write this stuff. We just have a few lines from what the original authors gave us, and we have to decide how to expand on it or if we even want to. The unicorns are a bit of a mystery.
Okay. But yeah, by the way, I love this art style.
Yeah, Brandon does really, really good work. Um, And he's another one that like, so he's interesting in that he prices his stuff by hour. So this is a 1 hour sketch for him. Yeah, he's a machine. And then you can, if you want him to spend extra time on them, you can have higher levels of rendering. And we chose to go with black and white because the original artwork for the book from back in the day was all black and white. And so we thought it would be fun to do the bestiary in black and white mostly.
Now, I think in this particular case, black and white really works. I mean, like it's quite a powerful image in black and white.
Yeah, we love it.
And okay, this is
So this is an NPC in the game. His name is Draconis. So as Seth mentioned, there were these kind of fantasy resorts. And again, that gets into a lot of detail that's contained in the backstory, which if you're interested in it, it takes us about 11 minutes to read through the text. But if you go to DriveThruRPG at the link, that write-up is the full, if you go to the full preview, that's what you can read that full write-up so you can get an idea of what the game world is like, to really see if it strikes your fancy.
It's worth reading.
So
it's pretty awesome.
So Draconis was he was originally a dragon at one of these resorts. And to kind of touch on this is that these monsters that were at the resorts were all semi-autonomous illusions. So they had some measure of free will, some more than others, but they weren't like real creatures. And Draconis as a dragon had a little bit more autonomy than others, and he had a tendency to escape. One time while he had escaped to Mackinac Island, an event occurred that caused all of these illusory beings to become truly real creatures. And in his particular case, when that affected him, he also became a Sorane. And so he was already a dragon, and then Sorane, like all of their body attributes or all of their attribute maximums double. So he just becomes insanely powerful right off the bat. But he also grows so big that his wings won't let him fly anymore. And so he's essentially trapped on Mackinac Island. And what we have here is this dual-headed dragon that is bored and ends up essentially being something of a mobster con artist. He has agents that work in New Tech City that arrange hunting trips to try to hunt him. And so would-be adventurers will come to his island and try to kill him or take one of his scales or something like that. And he lets just enough of them to survive, to keep hope alive, kills just enough of them to ensure that there's an element of real danger for the people who are coming in. And he does it just because he's bored. And so he's a really, really fun character. There is I don't know if you want to post it or talk about this. We did a podcast once where we talked through an adventure that featured him. Okay. If you're interested, I can shoot you the details. But it's I don't
throw me the link and they can share it. No problem.
Yeah. I'll pop it up in the. I'll send it to you through Discord as soon as I can get my mouse to work. But yeah, so he's a lot of fun, kind of a neat character, and this is actually what we're looking at is one of the original illustrations from the book from '97. The only thing that has been done, so JP took this and he went through and cleaned it up. All of the illustrations were scanned at a completely state-of-the-art scanner that hit things at like 72 DPI back in 1998, and so they're not really suitable for printing. So he took the original, which had not been archived, and he went through with some tools and redrew it and cleaned it up. So you have this image here, which is a lot of fun.
Okay, I think that was the last of the images you had here.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1 second. Okay, so apart from the quick start, when do we get to play this?
One more time.
I said, apart from the quick start, when do we get to play this?
Well, it depends on where you live. So the weekend of the 25th of May, so that's whatever the weekend of that week, we are going to be at Chupacabra Con, which is in Austin or near Austin, Texas. We've got a couple of other con presentation or performances, not performances, but
Appearances.
yeah, there we go. That's the word I'm looking for. There's one in Rogers, Arkansas. There's a couple others in Texas where we're based. And then I think we're leaning heavily towards attending one called Page 4, which apparently is in the Philadelphia area. It's in January. That's the biggest problem. It's Philadelphia in January, so the weather sucks. But apparently last year it kind of blew up on the indie gaming scene, and so we wanted to go there. Other than that, we're not quite at a point from a number of perspectives to be ready to start running games, although we on any other basis, although we really want to. For me, frankly, it's a matter of time. Like I've already, my gaming time away from my kids is already kind of occupied with a couple of other campaigns. So I just need to get Seth out to get comfortable on the VTT, and he can start running it.
Technology.
VTTs work. They work just fine.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm going to drop your channel link in the chat again so people can follow up for more information. And I've also got your website here, which I shall also link.
Perfect. Thank you.
There you go.
Let's. Can we plug one other product too?
Please.
Travis, I don't know if we've published this yet, but we did make one called Breadcrumbs. It is a Dungeons and Dragons adventure. It doesn't have anything to do with Ultimate World, but for those of you who are interested in kind of our approach to stuff and want to see how we design games and the sorts of ways we think about it, it's a real simple 5-room dungeon that can be inserted into a campaign that you're already playing. That's if it's not out there already, it will. I think we're going to make it either free or pay what you will. Is that right, Tom?
Yeah, so that's one of our 2 entries that's going to be coming for Dungeon Jam.
Nice.
And so we'll do a YouTube video on it that'll release that week, and we're going to time the release on DM's Guild so that it'll be freely available. I think the intent of the Dungeon Jam is to make things free. We had originally thought about doing pay what you want, but that was more about some benefit to our publisher status on. Well, it was once you have a certain number of paid products on DriveThruRPG, you no longer have to have your products approved, and so you can just control when they release a lot more easily. But that doesn't carry over from DriveThru or from DM's Guild, so it doesn't really matter. No, that's a lot of fun. The other one that is available now on DriveThruRPG is one called Cube of Madness. This is kind of a fun one, and it along the lines of what Seth was talking about showing how we approach adventure design. This is a funhouse style dungeon, um, where each room is kind of disconnected from the next in terms of like it's not a big narrative. There is a narrative that you can carry through, but it's not like each room feeds on each other. Um, and what it does is based on how the players interact with the game, the dungeon changes shape.
Oh,
And the game master uses a Rubik's Cube to keep track of the position of the 27 rooms in the dungeon. And the goal of the players is to reach the center cube in a 3x3 Rubik's Cube. And so it's intended, in there, it's not a full adventure. It's a framework. It's how to use this to work. We give a couple of ideas for stories in a couple of different genres. And really, it's intended like you could literally just pull up some random maps and random tables. You can pull out the random table of puzzles, traps, and whatever, and a random monster table, and have at it. The way it's designed, you could stick a Tarrasque inside one of these rooms, and it would still be a viable gameplay experience because of the way we built the structure. So it's a lot of fun.
okay.
And that's
Yeah, that
available.
sounds
That's
like
pay
it.
what you want. I think a suggested price of $1, but it's pay what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, go check it out. Hopefully, as you guys download these things and take a look at them, generate some interest in Altered World. We know it's usually a big ask to get people to switch. Most people have the game that they play. Most people are playing D&D. There's some on Pathfinder, of course, and various other ones. But it's always a bit of a hassle to switch gears and be like, well, what is this game going to do for me better than the one that I already know?
You can
And
be a
we
squid.
hope that this one you can have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, you can have a woolly mammoth with a tank on top of it. It's like, what is there not to like? But yeah, the end is saying Cube was one of his favorite movies growing up. I don't think I've actually watched that one, but all right.
Yeah, that was actually part of what the inspiration for this the Cube of Madness adventure was, the movie The Cube.
Oh, we've actually overshot our time by about 30 minutes, but it's been a lot of fun talking to you guys. So,
Yeah, thanks for
before we wrap up, any closing thoughts, statements, anything you want to tell the people?
just to express gratitude. We're glad that you invited us to come and talk about our game. I really appreciate the audience engagement. That there've been some comments and questions. We'd love that. If you're interested in this, check out our YouTube channel. Please by all means download and play the Extraction Ostinato game. And once again, to shout out the artists that we've worked with, Ina in particular, Brandon has been great. Jimmy, thank you for everything. And, Travis, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I think the only other thing that I would add to that is, if you guys want to follow us or check us out on YouTube, it's Interaction Games. Next week, we'll be releasing a video as part of Monster Week. And so getting into some pedantic stuff about the Fae, because that's what I do. And then I think the week after, or 2 weeks after that, we're on a 2-week schedule. 2 weeks after that, we're looking at releasing we had a viewer gave a suggestion for an interesting character that they wanted to see in our system, and so we've made that character for them, and we're going to do a character highlight for it. And so we think that's kind of fun. And then we got 2 adventures that we're going to release as part of Dungeon Jam. So one is Breadcrumbs, and the other is an Altered World specific adventure focusing on Linda.
Nice. And
So.
Dungeon Matron says she also downloaded the game, but I think that was a given once she saw tentacles. Okay, so the links for interaction games are in the chat over the side and in the description below. Gentlemen, thank you so much. It has been so much fun talking to you, and I look forward to talking to you again. And yeah, our next stream will be next Saturday, not Sunday, with Chris Bynum, who will be walking us through the games that will be in Crit 2026. And yeah, in the meantime, you all have a lovely week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye
Bye.
bye.